report is there from the Venerable David Lohman, Chairman of the Independent Renumeration Panel. He's here to briefly present the report. Thank you for coming, David.
Thank you. You will have read the report, of course, of the Independent Remuneration Panel and its recommendations on the Members' Allowance Scheme. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Angela Murray, Alaric Bundy, for their valuable and wise contribution to this report. And thanks must also go to the staff members who have worked with us. We hope that the report is clear and provides a way forward as the Council begins its committee system. Can I emphasise the following points? One, our panel is politically independent. We have been asked to provide the outline of a scheme for a committee system and have, I believe, achieved that. Secondly, this is an interim measure prior to the scheduled 4-year review to be commenced later this year. So this will achieve a working way forward for the next few months. Third, we believe very strongly that the special responsibility allowance relates to the role being undertaken and not to the individual undertaking the role. Fourth, we were not governed by finance issues. However, we asked towards the end of our deliberations what the financial implications of our recommendations would be, and felt that it would be appropriate to include them in the report. As you can see, this scheme will cost less than the existing one, largely because less people will be receiving allowances because of the change to the from the cabinet to the committee system. 5, we decided to recommend keep the basic allowance for all members at the present level, and thus to calculate particular allowances on a percentage basis from that. And this provides the figures mentioned in Appendix 1 of the report. 6, we consider that this set of recommendations will provide an adequate working way forward for the members of Basildon Council to carry out their important work. And finally, on a personal level, may I thank my colleagues, staff members and councillors for their wisdom and great competence in the way that they have provided support for me over the 16 years that I've held this office. It has been a privilege to be of service to the people of the Borough of Basildon. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I would like to formally move the recommendations from the Chair. If there's a formal seconder, Councillor Ferguson, before anybody speaks, I would like to take the opportunity to thank, on behalf of the Council, David Lohman, Mrs Angela Murray, as they are retiring from the Renumeration Panel this year. David, as he said, has been with us since 2001. He's a former Archdeacon of Southend, then Chelmsford, although he conveniently seems to miss out when he was in Wickford at one time, a long while ago. And Angela's been a member since 2013. The third member of the panel, Mr Alaric Bundy, is continuing the panel, and the Employment and General Purposes Committee met last week to appoint 2 new members to fill the vacancy which had been advertised in the Borough Diary. So David, thank you very much. And I know you retired from one role, but now you're retired from this role as well, but thank you very much indeed. So we now move on to anyone who wishes to speak. David, Councillor Bass.
Thank you. I'd like
Oh, I thought he was formally seconded. I apologise. You can speak now if you're...
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I will second the report, and I wish to place on record my appreciation of the sterling work done by the Independent Remuneration Panel in producing the report. It is an excellent and well-considered report, which I am very happy to commend to members. It is, of course, as mentioned, an interim report for the purposes of changes in governance arrangements, and it is to be noted and welcomed that this change to a committee system will result in a cost reduction to the council in operating the special responsibility allowance scheme. Finally, I should like to extend my best wishes to those members of the panel who are retiring at this time and welcome the new members recently appointed. A full review of the scheme is due later this year, which will be undertaken by the new panel.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Dance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make no criticism at all of the panel, and any comments that I make is just a constructive comment regarding the report going forward. I've never interfered or made any comments regarding the panel. I think it should be made that it's their observations. But I will say this, that there's not a but I just want to make some observations. In relation to the page 28, the second point, of course there seems to be a recognition that the chairman and vice chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee include the role of leader and deputy leader. But we've all had a motion already passed that they're not going to be having that title. And I think that needs to be looked at very quickly, because as I understand it, we don't actually have a leader or deputy leader. So that role will need to be looked at. In relation to the observation that it's about the work, not the individual, I am concerned regarding what is being asked, and the rationale between the allowances being reduced because the number of cabinet members or people making decisions was reduced. But in fact, I think the reverse is happening. What was done by an executive position of 7 cabinet members is now being pushed out, and the work doesn't change. The work hasn't changed. The workload won't change, unless officers are saying that they're doing the work. And I have argued that some of these responsibilities are shifting to where the officers are now running and will be running and making decisions. Now, as I've said, I have no criticism of the Chief Executive. I have said that he is a fine leader. He's a fine stewardship for this council, and he has the business acumen. I've stood here in this council and said that. And whilst I have a recent criticism of this process, the process that we voted on, that is that. I'm able to separate it. But going forward, he is not elected. And I feel that actually the shift here in the workload, if it's going to paid staff, then that's going to be staff, but they are not democratically elected. And I feel that it's either this work is shifting to officers, which are undemocratically elected, or is it shifting to the elected members, but that work is not being recognised. Now, I know that this is an interim report, and lots have been rushed forward, but I'll wait for a moment for the Chief Executive to listen to you. So clearly, if the work is the decision making is not shifting to officers, if it is, we are going to be told it's more member participation, more member involvement, engagement, as we've been told by the leader of UKIP, then that needs to be recognised by the Independent Renumeration Panel going forward. I think not more work. Instead of one member making a decision, that's going to be now made by a committee of 9 members. All 9 members will need to read the papers, be fully briefed. There will be obviously a lot more engagement, and as I say, rather than one cabinet member, it will be 9 in effect de facto cabinet members all coming together, reading papers, being administered, and making decisions. So whilst I won't, as I say, interfere with this, I feel that it is only incumbent upon me to make some observations. So those going forward will take that hopefully not into account.
Thank you, Councillor Dance. Councillor Turner.
Yeah, I have to be in agreement with Councillor Dance. I think it's another piece of rush work, and no disrespect to you. I think you've done a fine job, but obviously you have been steered towards what the scope of work is. And I think, you know, and this is where I say I think council officers have forgotten that I have been leader up until about 2 seconds ago. And normally, the leader would have been entitled to a small chat with you on how that worked from their point of view, the scope. And that just hasn't happened. And I'm looking at this, and I'm in total agreement with Councillor Dance. I think if we're going to take this seriously, and we will do it, I think that workload, the burden, increases. It can do nothing else but. This is another good example, Mr. Mayor, where the costs have been suppressed because you and your team of 4, your gang of 4, want to keep those costs down. You don't want to go to the public, and you don't want to say to them, oh yeah, Phil Turner was right. 1.5 million is just the start, and this is where it starts. And it has been tampered with to the extent where the remuneration panel, unfortunately, have been led astray.
Turner, can I just ask you to withdraw that, please, because the inference has been... No, let me finish, please. Let me finish, please, Councillor. Let me finish, please. The impression someone has tampered with something gives the impression to the public and people who are listening that something wrong has been done illegally. That's just a temporary. You can probably rephrase that in a bit better way. You're quite a clever guy, and I'm sure you can.
No, Mr. Mayor, you are not going to corral me into something just for your making. This whole process, Mr. Mayor, is of your choosing. You gerrymandered all the way through. That is what the public needs to know. You're going to stop me again?
No, I want you to carry on.
Good.
Before I stop.
And unfortunately, with respect, and that not anything that you're doing, and nothing to blind the work that you've done, that scope hasn't been realised. And this is blatantly what we're trying to do. Yeah, at the moment, nobody can see any cost. The report is half-baked, the allowances are half-baked. Yeah, of course there won't be any cost. Guess what? You know, when we come back into administration, there's suddenly, out of the woodwork, become all these costs. And the burden is clear, we can see that now. Some of us remember what the committee structure was like. Yeah, we were in that committee structure. And then I have to say, well, you know, we haven't got a leader, and that's just political cowardice. That's nothing more. And Councillor Callaghan should grow a backbone. So suddenly we are rudderless. But the leader, it's clear here, the leader is going to get an allowance for doing the responsibility. No title. So when I look at the opposition group leaders, well, there's only one of those. That's me. So I'm entitled to that whole amount because I'm facing off to a coalition of a gang of 4 leaders. So what does this mean? Already the report is chaotic and shambolic, the allowances are chaotic and shambolic, and the poor residents sitting out there saying, okay, which one of you are leading? Which one is leading the council now? Because it's like you all are, and of course that's exactly what you're doing. All 4 of you are now leading the council, but with no coherent, joined up thinking on what the delivery is. They're going to say the costs, what are the priorities? How is this going to put Basildon forward? Feet first, it just isn't. So with respect, this is another piece of work that needs to go back to the remuneration panel. It needs to go back to them, and it needs to be scoped properly. And members, Mr. Mayor, need an input in that. Because we can't live with an allowance that undermine the work that we're doing. Now, in the past, we have always made a point of not setting our own allowances, and I'm not intending to do that here tonight, because that would be wrong. If members set their own allowances and gave themselves rises and all sorts of things, that just wouldn't be doing it. But I think we need that independent panel to take a view on exactly where we're heading. And if we are to do the borough proud under this committee system, then that needs to be reflected. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't wish to criticise, but I'd like to thank the work of the Independent Renumeration Panel. From my understanding, there's been 17 years of work conducted by this board that has produced a result that's been acceptable to all. But now we've gone into the committee system, their work is being questioned. I think that's inappropriate. And a comment made in the previous debate, which I think is relevant, is from my Councillor Blake, having a pop at me saying I'm after allowances. I'm on the record of refusing the 4% pay rise at County Hall, which was recommended by the Independent Renumeration Board, which wasn't questioned because the £500 pay rise was to pay for members' meals directly out of their pocket. And for those who've been newly elected to county, and Councillor George and Councillor Ellis who've recently come off, since they had to start paying for their lunches, how quiet is it in there now? And this is part here, the party of the free mileage. So I think it's a bit unfair to have a properly independent remuneration board. They're arm's length. They shouldn't feel like they're in some sort of tin pot dictatorship. They have to meet our whims and ways. They have to look at the work put forward, decide what is best, and if we feel that we're being overpaid, then by all means cut it to what it should be. It's meant to be arm's length. This isn't Zimbabwe, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll leave to the question.
Is there a second for the question, people?
Seconded. Unsatisfied? So we will now go to the vote. First of all, on the question be put. Who agrees the question now be put? All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. We will now... abstentions, I apologise. Vote is now carried. We will now vote on the recommendation of the Independent Remuneration Committee. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Abstentions? Carried. That is carried.
Those three members.
Now, before we break now until... Before we break now until 9:25 for the start of the AGM, please note I'm resigning from the position of Mayor of Basildon with immediate effect to enable me to stand for election as Mayor and participate and vote in relation to the election of the Mayor at the AGM, which I would otherwise have been unable to do. The Deputy Mayor will preside at the AGM. I have taken my own external advice in relation to this step, and officers confirmed yesterday that it is lawful. Thank you.